Good. More warrants? Hot diggity dog. Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting. Oh, great, thank you. I'd like to call this meeting of the Clay County Commission to order. We will start with our invocation. Treasurer Nance, if you would, please.
O Lord, our Governor, whose glory is in all the world, we commend this county to thy merciful care, that being guided by thy providence, we may dwell secure in thy peace. Grant to these leaders in authority, wisdom, and strength to know and to do thy will. Fill them with the love of truth and righteousness, and make them ever mindful of their calling to serve this people in thy fear. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who liveth and reigneth with thee in the Holy Spirit, one God, world without end. Amen.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte,
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Here.
and Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move that we approve the agenda.
Thank you. Motion has been made to approve the agenda. Discussion. I do have, as I have for the last couple of days, these are hearings we're having today, more in that character than an actual meeting, although they are, of course, official meetings. Therefore, I'm going to make a motion to amend the agenda and suspend the rules by removing from our agenda today honorary resolutions, public hearings, commission sessions, comments on agenda items, approval of minutes, written reports, and executive sessions. That leaves, apart from what we've already taken up, that allows for us to go into a meeting schedule, discussion items, which is our purpose here today, comments on non-agenda items, and then, of course, recess and adjournment. With that, is there any discussion on the amendment to the agenda? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll just make a comment at this point that those who may not be familiar with the new Constitution and the rules that we operate under, the presiding commissioner does not vote except under specific circumstances, chief among them being a tie vote of the commission. So, consistent with those constitutional limitations, I will not be voting on most of the articles today. So in case that throws you off a little bit, you kind of understand the context. That brings us back to the approval of the agenda as amended. Commissioner Carpenter, I believe it's your motion. If you
Thank you. Well,
I'm sorry.
unless there's any. All right, I close.
Very good. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to skip a step there. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
That brings us to meeting schedule. We have no more meetings scheduled for the remainder of this week. We will very likely have some next week, and those will be announced as we go along. So we don't have that specific one, at least that I'm aware of. It's not on our agenda. So I believe we anticipate, though, having if Mr. Budget Chair is maybe not the right word, but Mr. Sirks, I believe we are anticipating a meeting next week at 10 a.m. on Wednesday.
Steve Sirks, budget team. The plan is to have a commission meeting at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, January 20th, to address budget issues and seek commission approval on some items.
Very good. So that is our next meeting, at least that is contemplated at this point. That brings us to our discussion items. We will be doing budget hearings over a number of areas of the budget. A couple of things to point out is that those who are coming before the commission, please speak into your microphones. The button allows you to go from red to green, so that'll let you to speak. We are doing an audio recording, so if specifically at the beginning of your statements, if you could just mention your name so that the people who hear only the audio will be able to follow it more easily. Also, we are live streaming right now, so be aware that we also need to be speaking loudly enough for that to pick up. So into the microphones is our best way to go. What we've been doing is having those who come before the commission give a little bit of an introduction of what their department does, both for our benefit and the benefit of those citizens listening in case they're unfamiliar, and then discuss whatever points that you think are you want to bring to the attention of the commission, and then after that we will do questions and answers. So that's kind of the pattern we've been following. If you would like to proceed, please do.
Good morning, Commission. My name is John Kindred, and I am the Clay County Information Technology Manager. I have worked for Clay County in the IT department for 18 years, this going on 19, and this will be the 4th year I have been working as the Clay County IT Manager. I guess the mission of the Information Technology Department is to support the county's strategic business objectives to design, implement, and sustain a secure and reliable information technology environment, and to provide responsible management of the county's information technology resources. With that being said, the IT department provides technical services and support for what we consider to be the Clay County campus, which would be the administration building, sheriff's office, Rooney Justice Center, juvenile detention, the facilities building, and as well as the Franklin building, which I think some people refer to it as the bank. We also provide technical support to the Clay County Annex, parks in Smithville, and the park rangers, the historic sites, which would be like James Farm in Kearney, as well as the bank in Liberty. We provide services to the MNAC, the county airport, and several other remote locations throughout the county.
Okay, did you have something you want to say as well? Okay.
Introduce myself, I guess. I'm Victoria Vasquez, the IT project manager, and I lead and manage our projects on the network and operations side.
Very good. Are there any areas of the budget that you would like to point out to us? Anything that you would that you have some thoughts you'd like to express on funding levels or any other issues?
Well, this is John Kindred, IT manager. After just kind of doing a general overview of what the 2021 proposed is, I believe that IT will be able to continue support as normal with the adjustments that have been made. Of course, I'm not sure if there's any other adjustments that's made since this document came out. One thing that I would point out to is that 10607-342, which under the general fund is defined as building construction and materials. This line item is what we use to support and maintain the Clay County tower sites. For those that are not familiar with the Clay County tower sites, the primary one is the highway tower, and it provides 2 levels of support to the county. One, it's radio communication for the Clay County Sheriff's Office and the Metropolitan Public Safety. So it basically works for the entire metro area, helping provide communications to Sheriff's Office and public safety in general. The second function of that tower is it provides an extension of the Clay County network, which is actually reaching out to our Clay County Parks Department and our historic sites and the airport. With that being said, the funding on that was reduced to $5,281. Last year, our expenses at that site were $8,281. So it's really important that I'm hoping that we can basically bring the funding up maybe to 10K to give us a little bit of leeway if prices go up on things. But we do all our maintenance to the generators. The tower light has a
Inspection.
it has an inspection that happens 4 times a year to make sure that it's working so that planes don't hit it, which if it were to fail, the FCC would fine the county. So in general, I just wanted to see if maybe that can be increased to make sure that we can meet what our last year's expenses were.
Okay.
Steve Sirks, budget team, just for clarification, what is that dollar amount you're requesting?
John Kendrick with the IT department. I would say if we could just bring it up to 10,000. Like I said, it would give us just a little bit of leeway if prices have increased next year.
Thank you.
Obviously, IT is an expensive part of our operation that we have to be able to serve our citizens. But there has been some considerable growth in IT in recent years. Right now, we're in a position where we need to be looking at economizing, so that's something that we will be considering as we go forward with the budget process. Are there any places where you would recommend any economies? I guess what I'm looking for is some idea of where you would see the possibility of savings being found.
John Kendrick with the IT department. I think that a couple lines that we could look at would be 201 and 209. A lot of the other lines are pretty hard set because we have regular maintenance contracts and things that we are already obligated to pay. But I definitely think we could talk about reducing in those 2 lines.
Can you give us some idea of what is included? Those would be 201 being accounting and consulting services, 209 being miscellaneous professional services. So if you could give us just kind of a rough idea of what is entailed in those 2 categories, then there may be follow-up questions from there.
Well, generally speaking, accounting and consulting services would be services provided like by Converge One, which is a company that we work with when we have technical issues that are beyond our ability to manage and take care of. Professional services kind of fall in line where if we're doing installation of cabling, if we need services which would also require electrical or basically services for the installation of new hardware or replacement of old hardware throughout the county buildings in relation to IT infrastructure.
Okay. Were there any other areas that kind of came to mind on that, in that line?
I'd actually have to go back and look at
Sure.
the document. I didn't actually bring that with me, so I can provide that.
And by the way, and this, of course, applies to everyone, and that is that any additional material you want to provide to the commission and to the budget team
Yeah.
would be very helpful. In fact, it might be best to give it to the budget team directly. That probably is the most, and then, of course, to the clerk, and then it would get distributed to we at the commission. Actually, if you can get 5 copies of whatever you're doing, that might be a most effective way to do it. Commissioner Thompson, did you have anything you'd like to ask or talk about?
I do. I've got just a couple questions. For starters, thanks for coming in today. I really do appreciate it. I don't think I've had a chance to sit down and talk to you guys about some of this in depth in the past. How many full-time employees do you have right now under IT?
John Kendrick with IT. Currently, we have 9 employees.
So within your proposed budget here, is there anything that has to do with any of the electrical or any of the hookups that for the proposed new annex building? Because I see down here in 100-607-210, it says like new building network access. Is that for like the annex that's proposed out there, or is there?
Actually, John Kendrick with IT. Sorry to cut in there. Actually, that was for when we actually took over the Franklin building.
Okay.
Those are expenses that are actually falling there, and we actually need to edit that so that it kind of correctly reflects that.
So some of this has already been, it's already been done and we just have to pay for it now? Or is this for more upgrades to the Franklin building that we're leasing?
So when you look at 607-210, you're actually looking at what are generally our, I would call IT utilities. These are the bills that we pay every year.
Okay.
So it's something that you can't cut because we have to pay for it monthly.
But if we don't have the Franklin building anymore, some of these bills would go away?
Yeah, that would be true.
Okay. Do you know which ones those would be?
With the Franklin building, it's going to be number 5. That would, I think the bill is between $2,500 and $3,000 a month, so that kind of falls
Okay.
in there.
Okay, so there's nothing else within the budget then, the proposed budget, that would be for the annex, the new annex site that's under the certificate of participation? None of this falls underneath there?
John Kinder with IT, yeah, that would be true. The thing with the annexes is that most of what I know of, because we've only had a minimal amount of interaction in this process, we've kind of been pushed out of the loop. Most of the IT infrastructure is built into the bond, or into what the original proposal. The only thing that was not built into it was if the building was built, putting in network switches, which would require the IT to pay for it out of our 2021 budget.
So that is in here?
It would be under 302. I'm anticipating that we would probably have to spend approximately $100,000 for hardware networking equipment to go into that building.
Okay.
It also would require that UPN is our primary internet provider. Again, that's a monthly service that we pay for, and which keeps the county connected. And it's the internet, and it also interconnects our buildings together, that we will have to move that connection from the current location to whatever the new location is, which may require new contracts to be written and signed. So that's just something to be aware of.
Okay. But nothing as of right now has been signed or set up for the new annex building for any of this stuff?
Yeah, at this point now,
Okay,
it's
good.
kind of all in my mind, it's in limbo for us. We don't know where it's at.
Okay. So within the COP money, was any of it designated for your guys' department?
Talking about the bond? Actually, no, we didn't get any funding from the
Okay.
bond whatsoever.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Thank you, Commissioner. The thing I'm curious about is basically just trying to understand why the growth has occurred. I'm not saying it's, wrong or bad, but like when I look at the 2019 number you guys were at 2.15 million as your overall expenditures, and then the budget request this year was just over 3.2 million, which would be just about a 50% increase from the 2019 level. And then, when you break it down, pretty much all of the lines go up pretty dramatically in that way. 500,000 and the 100s for salaries and benefits in 2019, and then up to a request of over 800,000 in 2021, and then that follows through along these other lines as well. So, just help me understand what the changes over the last couple of years that would have led to the increase.
John Kinder with IT. Speaking on salaries, we have 2 open positions that we would like to fill, so I know that there's probably monies in there for that and could related to increase there. As far as overall technology, the last 2019 we purchased a new SAN, which is a Dell EMC storage area network, which basically is where almost all the county servers and data resides. That was a almost $700,000 purchase. We purchased it making payments in 3-year increments. So this year is the 3rd increment. So in retrospect to 10607-228, there's a line in there to make that next payment, which will be the final payment. I think generally, obviously, the county is growing. The needs for people and technology are growing. We are we're making the county more redundant, giving it more, making everything more secure. So redundancy security it's not just keeping somebody out. It's also making sure that if part of the network goes down, it stays up. So we're actually making changes to put redundant switches like in the admin building. So if switch 1 goes down, switch 2 is up, and everybody's still connected if we were to lose connectivity on our internal network. So we're trying to be proactive, and we have made several software purchases over the last couple of years to help protect us from the external environment, from being attacked by ransomware or viruses or malware, which in the long run, paying a little extra money seems to be a better solution than if we were actually hit with ransomware and you have to spend millions and millions of dollars to recover your data and your entire network. So that's kind of primarily how it's been working the last few years, just trying to just secure it up and make it so that you have what you need and protect it at the same time.
Thanks. And so what are your thoughts in terms of how secure are we? I mean, obviously, you mentioned ransomware, malware. It's going to be an ongoing thing, right, in society, that those threats, and then threats as well as hacking and non-state actors, foreign governments, right? You never know who you might be dealing with going into the future in terms of keeping data secured. And are we in a good place in Clay County, or what are your thoughts?
I believe we're in a good place. I'm confident in what we have. I mean, I can never say never, but the software that we have bought and put in place, we have layers of protection, whether it's internal firewalls where it's the getting in, and then we have what we call domain service protection, where it's kind of like an umbrella over the top of our heads for security. And every year we pretty much have we bring in a third party, which has been Converge One, to actually scan our network and get inside and look at it and see where we're at, so that we can see what changes that we need to make and apply those as soon as we can to help stay up with the protections of the current world.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I do share the concerns about the fact that IT has had some pretty substantial increases in recent years. So, yeah, I think that's something that we need to look at. Do you anticipate as we go forward that these increases continuing, or are we are you looking at a stable situation? And obviously, nobody has a crystal ball, but do you anticipate any of the dramatic increases in budget for IT that we've seen in the past, say, 3 or 4 years?
John Kinder with IT. I think that we are probably leveling off and being more stable. I think this year we had some projects that we wanted to do again, which to make the physical network more redundant and protected. And in general, we have things in play that, again, softwares that were purchased that as long as we keep them, again, I think we'll hit a steady line. Obviously, we want to have some funds available in case an emergency happens, and we have to purchase things that are necessary at the time, which you cannot predict. But I think even last year, if you go back and look at the numbers, I don't think that IT actually spent all the money that was put in the budget. But again, you definitely want a buffer there just in case we have to go out and buy equipment on the fly. So.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you don't necessarily spend all the money budgeted. However, this year we are looking at a significant amount of money, of a reduction in the rollover from 2020. So that's obviously putting us into a less comfortable situation than we would certainly like to be in budgetarily. So it's going to necessitate some decisions be made. Budget team have any questions or comments?
Steve Sirks for the budget team. As Commissioner Carpenter pointed out, your expenditures in 2020 were almost $2.4 million, and your request this year was about $3.2 million. So that's a pretty good jump. Also keep in mind that your contractual supplies expenditure percent was 82% in 2020. And in commodities was about 62%, which that's commendable that you didn't spend all your budget, and we appreciate that, and it helps with the cash carryover. But I guess the real question is that in line with the fact that your total expenditure budget last year was about $2.4 million, don't you think that's something that you could probably live with this year also? I say that, I couch that because of the fact that when the budget team started working on this project, looking at the budget, and as I've discussed with you, Mr. Kindred, we were already $2.7 million in the red, and we've had to try to look at ways to balance the budget. So keeping all those things in mind, we're looking at for economies and adjustments to the proposed current budget that will assist us in achieving a balanced budget. So please go ahead.
John Kinder with IT. So if I'm understanding you right, you're basically, is it possible to roll back to 2.1 versus 2.9 million?
My question of you was, is since you spent $2.39 million last year, wouldn't that be acceptable enough for you to get by with this year?
John Kinder with IT. I think that what I would like to do then, if we're going to like look at those levels of cuts, is to make sure that we don't cut that money out of lines where I know I have to make payments. I guess that's where I would go with that. I'm more than willing to sit down with you and actually go through it and look at it at any time.
Or I am assuming that some of these projects in here are future projects maybe that haven't been done yet. Obviously, we don't want to cut off the county's internet access or any core essential functions, but, you know, this is kind of a lean budget year, so we're looking for any possible savings we can without going out and doing some new things. You know, it seems that the IT budget has been growing kind of exponentially over the last 5 years, and it may need to be adjusted somewhat.
John Kinder, IT. Yeah, I would say, again, if you want to sit down and go through the numbers and look at it, I'm more than willing to.
Okay, we'll probably do that then. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything further from the budget team? Yes, I should say Auditor Hurlbert, excuse me.
Thank you, Commissioner. Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. I just want to throw out since I have you here, brief little time, just long-term, I wanted to hear your thoughts on any possible economies of scale, savings, efficiencies in terms of specifically telephone, cell phone providers. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something practical we could look at in the future for our administrator and commission to explore?
John Kinder, IT. I guess we actively are always looking at ways to save money. We work with, if you're talking about our cellular service, Verizon, we actively work with them every year where they're working with us to reduce costs. We typically try, if something isn't in use, it's either suspended or canceled, and we were looking at cost savings that way. As far as having a built-out perspectives of what we can do in the future, we don't have that, but we could build that out.
Anything further from budget team? Very good. What I'd like to do then is to, and I think we've gotten all the comments and questions from the commissioners for the moment. So you have a couple of minutes left. Could you go ahead and just give us any overview that you would like? Like I said, I appreciate the fact that you and our budget team will be getting together because it is this is a budget that you know as far as your own budget for your department. So being able to give us some idea of priorities, I think, helps us to put together a more responsible budget, and certainly your insights are welcome, but clearly we have some parameters we're working within. So if you'd like to take a minute or two and give us any closing remarks.
John Kinder with IT. Yeah, one of the things I should mention too is over the last couple of years that in our 228 line, which is software, that we have actually been absorbing the cost of software purchases for other departments, which could be, again, a potential visible increase in our budget line. But just to give you a perspective on that, we have purchased, and the software for the Parks Department, we purchased software for the Highway Department, we've purchased software for the Park Rangers. So in generally speaking, I guess some of their expenses has been deferred over into our department, which could show you a visible increase in things. And I think the mentality for doing that was because IT is going to install it and support it anyway, that they would just go ahead and put that into our budget. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know, in general, I look forward to working with the budget team to make whatever adjustments necessary without crippling the IT department from doing our regular tasks and jobs. And I appreciate to get the opportunity to work with the new commissioners. Thank you.
And thank you for letting us know about particularly about, buying software for other departments. Parks is another area in government that has experienced some fairly dramatic growth. So it helps to kind of shed light on other departments, including your own. So we appreciate those comments. There's no other questions from anybody? Thank you very much for being here today. With that, we will move to law enforcement. And the Sheriff's Department to hear about their budget. Just to give you some orientation, the way we've been operating is we ask everyone to go ahead and introduce themselves, maybe talk a little bit about the Sheriff's Department. Obviously is rather self-evident what they do, but still, if you could kind of give the public an idea of the scope of your duties so that they understand fully. And then we'd like you to go ahead and discuss whatever you want to point out to us in budget that should come to our attention particularly. We will then do questions and answers through the board. And please speak into the microphones. Make sure that it is green, not red when you speak. And do be aware that we are doing an audio as well as a video recording. So if you could, not each and every time necessarily, but if you could identify yourself when you're speaking, that would probably be helpful. So with that, if you'd like to proceed.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sheriff Will Aiken with the Clay County Sheriff's Office. I'm going to back this up just a little bit. Good morning, and I just want to say it feels really good to actually go through this process and not be confrontational, or at least have that feeling or the environment of confrontation. And so thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about our budget. I have with me Captain Amy Agdarian, who is our budget officer, is what we'll call her. And all right, let me get settled here. Oh, yes. Another thing I'd like to do is thank the commission for the extended time to go over our budget. I know there's typically 30 minutes allotted for each of the office holders, and you have graciously given us 1 hour to discuss any of the issues that we have and moving forward with our budget. Definitely want to thank you for that. Okay, so I just want to just say a few remarks more, and then I'm going to turn it over to Amy or Captain Agdarian. We submitted a budget request last year of $23.2 million and change. What was proposed back was $19.2 million, which was roughly $4 million in a cut from our operating expenses. Just want to throw that out there because there are a lot of things that we had requested last year that is different. Our situation, our circumstance is different from that point to this point, because there are a lot of things that we're doing within the Sheriff's Office as far as restructuring and identifying, first of all, recognizing that the condition that the former administration left the county in was not a good one. And we want to be able to do our part to work with the other office holders and the rest of the county to make sure that we can make ends meet with what the requests are from everyone. One of the things on top of that is, 2020 was a hard year for law enforcement. And there's this effort, if you will, to quote unquote defund the police. And there are items that we have requested in our budget that have to do with training. Training is not one of those areas that we need to cut from. We've already done our part regionally with the state and federally to meet the guidelines that are already being placed in front of us. So that way we can start meeting the, I want to say the demands of that effort, but I'm happy to say that the demands of that effort, we're already there. There's just some tweaks that we're doing, but one of the things that I need to focus on is the training aspect. Training is going to be important because if we have deputies that are authorized to execute executive authority over another citizen, we need to be able to be justified in what we're doing, and the only justification is through knowledge, experience, and training. And so I definitely want to touch on that piece. Another piece I want to touch on is the sheriff's office hasn't had a significant increase in personnel since 1993. So for the last 27 years, the sheriff's office has been performing its duties in a county that has grown by almost over 100,000 people. And, you know, we have to have the personnel to support that type of growth. Last year, we submitted a document that had 35 and a half positions that we've been requesting, and if you'll bear with me, I just want to read these really quick, not the justification piece, but just to kind of give you an idea of what we've been asking for. We've been asking, so last year we submitted a request for 5 transport deputies. Transport is it affects the entire sheriff's office, but it also affects the partnerships that we have with the municipalities and adjacent counties. And when we have to go outside of our area, then we have to send personnel. Well, in order to do that, we have to take from other divisions. And we are already short-staffed in those other divisions. So if you can imagine the strain on operations that causes for us, it's significant. We've also asked for 6.5 positions. Okay, so transport duties, we've asked for 5 years in a row for 5 transport deputies. For the last 2 years, we've asked for 6.5 positions for our drug task force. As you may or may not know, last year we lost our grant because of the situation with the county. And we've always relied on that grant in order to fund our drug task force deputies. We need to fully absorb those deputies because we are not eligible for the grant again this year. And from my understanding, that grant may or may not be eligible in the next 2 to 3 years. So the funding source is drying up. For the last 5 years, we've been asking for a PC specialist. For the last 2 years, we've been asking for a CCW office manager. For the last 5 years, we've been asking for 4 additional road patrol deputies. For the last 3 years, we've been asking for 2 court security deputies. For the last 4 years, we've been asking for an administrative lieutenant within the administration division of the sheriff's office. For the last 2 years, we've been asking for 2 additional detectives. Now, I will say that even though I'm reading this list off, and I'll get to the point here once I'm done, we've already identified areas where we can cut back on our request. And I'll point that out here in a second. For the last 5 years, we've been asking for 2 additional dispatchers. For the last 5 years, we've been asking for 3 additional fugitive deputies. And then finally, in the last 2 years, we've asked for 2 additional civil process deputies, for a total of 35.5 positions that we've been requesting. After working with the restructure with Captain Agdarian and restructuring the sheriff's office, and working with which this is going to sound really weird for me because for the last 8 years I've called him Captain Steve Sirks, Mr. Steve Sirks, and the budget team, we've gotten it down to 11 positions. So we went from, let me find my numbers here, asking for $2.2 million in additional personnel down to $681,000. And we can make this work with the new structure of the sheriff's office. There are still some other things that we have to do that will get us through the year, but it will give us a better idea of what to ask for 2022. But this will address the issues that we have now. The last piece I'd like to just talk about real briefly is the salary restructure for the sheriff's office that I have briefly discussed with everyone in the past. And that amount is approximately $1.5 million. The reason why we need to do a salary restructure is because and I'm not looking forward to being the top paid law enforcement agency in the area. We just need to be competitive. As it stands right now, we're not even a stepping stone anymore. Our adjacent county, Platte County, which is very comparative to us as far as the growth of the county and the duties and responsibilities of their sheriff's office. As of October of last year, they started their starting salary at $45,000. Our deputies currently start out at $35,400. So that's almost a $10,000 difference starting salary. As of January 1st this year, our neighbors right across the street with the Liberty Police Department started their officers off at $45,000 a year. Other municipalities are already looking at restructuring their salaries, and we're still so far behind them as it is that they're going to continue to leave us in the dust. So the salary restructure is going to address the issues that we have. And again, we're not looking at being the highest paid agency. We're just looking at being competitive again, because competitiveness is where we're going to get the personnel that we're asking for. And all the vacancies that we've had in the past, we'll be able to bring or draw applicants, quality applicants, to work with the sheriff's office. Is it going to solve our problems? No, but we'll be able to make it work. We've been able to make it work for the last 5 years under the conditions that we had under the previous administrations. By golly, with this commission, we're going to be able to certainly make things work moving forward. But it's crucial that we are able to adjust those salaries, because we need quality deputies, quality employees with the Clay County Sheriff's Office representing the citizens of Clay County. So with that, I will turn it over to Captain Agdarian, and she will talk about the specifics, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Captain, as you get into more of the specifics, and this is your call, if you would like to do a specific area and then do questions, or if you would like to do the entire presentation that you have and then do questions, whichever you would find easier, is certainly your call.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And this is Captain Amy Agdarian, Clay County Sheriff's Office Administration Division. Good morning to all of you. And again, I echo Sheriff Aiken's appreciation of having an hour to address this budget, which it's large. But I would also like to say that I echo his identification of the salary restructure and the need to identify, hire, and retain the quality personnel for the sheriff's office, because we're responsible for a lot more than most municipalities, and the service that we have been able to give to the citizens of Clay County, even with the restrictions that we are faced with, is I'm proud of the sheriff's office. I've been an employee here for 25 years, and I will tell you that I have never known such as, not just from me, but I hear the murmurings from other people. People in the county are excited about what's to come with the changes here, with the improved relationships for all county office holders, and I am really, I'm nervous right now, but I am really excited and happy to be here in this position. All right. What I have for you are copies of the actual sheriff's office requests, if that is something that you're interested in, because that's what I'm going to speak to, and that's where we can identify places that are absolutely critical for the sheriff's office, and some places that possibly we could look at reducing the request if some other requests are granted.
Do we have maybe staff to distribute those? I assume they're for the commissioners?
2, 3. I have 8 copies here.
Oh, that should
Wait.
be great. Thank
Yeah,
you, by the
there you
way.
go. Thank you.
And that way we can, once we get them, we can follow
Yeah,
along with what you're
absolutely.
saying.
I think it would make maybe more sense, and it would possibly be easier to speak to if we take it a section at a time.
Good.
And so what Leslie is handing out, this is the operating budget. And this is where we've typically and traditionally had some issues with things being cut. So the first thing that I want to say is that when you look at the overall 279 proposed budget for 2021, it's a little over 19 million, I believe. We have the numbers, I could find them real quick. But the point is, the majority of that is personnel, okay? And the personnel costs proposed have not changed in '21 from 2020. So what we're going to speak to is the operating budget. And I'm only going to talk about the operating budget as it pertains directly to the sheriff's office regarding accounts that we have expenditure authority over. One of those accounts is the 613 Facilities Management Detention Fund, and I'm not even sure that I put it in this packet because we have no expenditure authority. It's over $500,000, and it goes to maintain our detention center, as I believe that is, I spoke with Auditor Hurlbert, that is because of the law enforcement sales tax. But to be blunt, not a penny of that money goes towards the operating budget of the sheriff's office that we can control to get equipment and resources to our people.
Could you give us an example of some of the resources you're talking about, just so it's a little more
Absolutely.
real?
When I talk about the resources, I'm talking about body armor, cars, fuel for the cars, equipment for the cars that go out into the county where we're getting, where we're seeing an increase in property crimes. And we need to have our presence out in the county as well as closer in the municipalities because we're everywhere. I'm also talking about the resources for the day-to-day. It seems so tedious, but boxes of copy paper, pens, not recording devices, but DVDs, flash drives, for fulfillment of records requests, which actually to the public, we have been able to keep the cost of answering records requests down for years and years because we deal directly with the people that are making the requests, and we provide them in the most efficient, fastest, and most cost-effective manner. So, I'm literally talking about pens for the clerks to, cleaning equipment for our custodial staff, all the way up to the body armor of the cars, the training that Sheriff Aiken spoke of. This is the stuff that we need day to day, 365 days a year to function. So I guess to begin, what I would say is that packet that I gave you, and I apologize, there may be one page out of order. It should start with page 9 and end with page 72. So if there is a double copy of page 9 and 10, you can throw that out. It might be attached to the back. I just noticed that. When I look through these budget requests, these actual requests, I've looked at them line by line. I have had the privilege to learn the budget from, he's still Captain Sirks to me. I'm just going to call him, he's always going to be Captain Sirks. I had the privilege of learning the budget under him, and I have scoured this budget, and I will tell you that with certainty, these are things we need. Is there room in this budget for some leeway? Absolutely, and I will identify those items for you. But this was the budget that we submitted in July when there was a contentious relationship, and we had to ask for things that we needed to function, to keep the lights on, to work, and then also items that we really, really hoped for because we had been denied them for so long. That's what this budget is. So we'll talk about our needs, our wants, and our would like to haves. So we're going to talk about 5 divisions, and I know that we've discussed maybe restructuring the sheriff's office into the 8 divisions that the restructure, Sheriff Aiken's restructure would look like in the future, but for this year, we can make it work with the current budget structure. with the exception of, we have asked the budget team to centralize personnel as much as possible, and we will just wait to see what happens with that. We've been in discussions with them, but for the operating budget, let's start with page 11 is the first line item. And I'm not going to go through this line item by line item, we'd be here all day long. But basically, this is the 553 operating budget, that is field operations, which this year will comprise patrol and investigations. And we will in-house manage the division of the monies given to that division. We will manage in-house how that gets divided out. And you can see here that basically these are things like lab fees, the contribution to MoWin, which even though we no longer have the grant for the personnel, we still have the operating expense of the drug task force.
Could you, and something that we obviously are familiar with, but if you could, for those citizens watching, when you use an acronym, define what MoWin is?
Oh, my goodness. You're going to get me on that one. I've
But
never
it's-
known it anything other than MoWin. What-
So Sheriff Aiken, there are a lot of acronyms that we use that we don't actually know what they stand for, and even myself, I couldn't tell you.
It
Missouri.
doesn't have to
the
be
Missouri-
exactly what it stands for,
Oh,
but just kind of an idea
okay.
of what the
This
functionality
is,
is.
MoWin is a group of law enforcement agencies in this area that all function under the same purpose, and that is to identify and eliminate illicit drug use. It came about because of meth labs in the
So it's
90s.
essentially a
Yeah.
drug task force.
It
unit.
is.
It's a drug task
And we
force
pay
unit
into
that-
it,
Yeah,
so.
and it involves Kansas City, Jackson County, Platte County, and Clay County. A few years back, there was an effort to consolidate drug task force because the grant money was actually drying up. And so in that effort, we brought together one team that we call, or reference to, MoWin. And collaboratively, we work, so we have basically jurisdiction in all 4 areas, so that way we can increase our staffing for different operations and stuff. But like I said, we lost our portion of that grant last year, and but that doesn't mean that we've stopped working with them, because we still have operational costs, and we still have an obligation to be there for our partners.
Right. Yeah, and as you go along, that was a great explanation, because it enlightens us on some of the other stuff, but, certainly just to be able to say this does this function
Sure.
is sufficient. But I think that particular one did warrant the extra explanation involved. But as you go along, if there's some that don't necessarily warrant that, just feel free to say that this
Okay.
has to do with one thing or another.
Okay. And I'm really not going to go through this line by line, but I will just direct you as we flip pages together, we can just talk about why those things are important. And as far as questions, please interrupt me anytime. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. So, and as we continue on through pages 12 and 13, these are the costs of, we're in the contractual portion, and basically these are the contracts that we need for software, maintenance, services to keep field operations afloat. A lot of these are related to investigations, investigatory software. There's some crime analytics costs, membership fees and renewals to specific agencies, such as our mules fee that we have to pay for use of Kansas City's dispatch services and not dispatch services, but information for crime reporting and, let's see here, evidence, property management. I mean, and then down into, now we're getting into commodities on page 16. Again, these are the things that we need to provide records to people, make copies. There are some costs related to the STAR team at the bottom of page 17.
And the STAR team
The
would
STAR,
be,
yes, the STAR team is Special Tactics and Response, which is basically SWAT for the sheriff's office.
right.
And just to back up real quick, MoWin stands for Missouri Western Interdiction and Narcotics. That was bugging me.
Thank you, it was
Oh,
bugging him.
you show off.
You didn't Google that, did you? Okay, so, anyway, so yes, basically the SWAT team for the sheriff's office, we call it the STAR team, and so they have some breaching supplies that they have requested for entry into like barricaded parties, things like that, help them get access with minimal damage to property or injury to people. As we go through, just drug test kits for identification of illicit substances in the field. And this division provides those test kits to the whole sheriff's office. So we use them in detention sometimes. We use them in the schools often. You know, as far as the capital expenses, every year we request capital. We've never gotten it. We scrimp and scrape and, you know, try to make it work, but we have requested some capital expenses, and I will point out those expenses in capital that really we need. This one, the camera upgrade for $4,872.
What page are you on, please?
I'm sorry, that is the bottom of page 19. That is a camera upgrade that monitors our dispatch lobby on the first floor of the public safety building. And it allows our dispatchers and I believe also our, back in the detective unit, they can see who is in the lobby. So that's an unsecured area to come into. Granted, we've got a security door, but that unsecured public access area needs to be able to be monitored.
And just to follow up with that, I'm sure everyone has seen in the news recently what happened at Lee Summit with Troop A headquarters. The area in front of our lobby door, there's several things that need to be addressed there, and one of them is lighting. It's really dark in that area, but I know that it involves another department, facilities, to do lighting, and that's not cheap. We recognize that. The one thing that we can do is have cameras inside that lobby, but we need to have them in specific strategic areas so that way we don't have someone who enters, we don't see them, and then they're hiding in the stairwell. So when our deputies or our employees walk out the door, they have a clean shot at us. So if you're not familiar with what happened in Lee Summit, there was a gentleman who was hiding in between two cars with a rifle. And as people who were going to exit the building, he was going to become an active shooter. But there was a highway patrolman who was actually switching cars out, and he was able to, he saw him and was able to take action and prevented the active shooter incident. That just happened in our backyard, and we don't want it to happen here.
No, I think you're absolutely right. One of the, just if I might interject here, one of the things that we hope is going to make things a lot easier, and it's I think a way for us to be more efficient without necessarily making cuts or anything like that, and that is an increased cooperation between, say, the Sheriff's Department and facilities. I think an increased cooperation and coordination is going to make those resources that we have go further, and I think it helps just the relationship between the sheriff and the administration, which I think drastically needs some attention.
And we have already seen the fruits of that. More and more departments are working together, which with the history of the sheriff's office and other departments hasn't been the case. But in the first, 2 weeks of January, that's completely changed, and we're extremely grateful.
And I would like to echo that. This week alone, I have had a meeting with John Kindred in County IT to address some concerns about problematic communication and honestly, some control issues that have hindered the sheriff's office ability to provide services. And he and I have had some conversations about how to move forward and fix those problems. And it's going to involve some give and take on both sides, but at least we're able to talk to one another now.
Well, the good thing about that also is the people in, and by the way, I want to make clear, there is good reason for the Sheriff's Department to have a separate IT department. That is not just a territorial thing.
Correct.
There are good practical reasons for it. But what I'd like to point out is that some of the personnel that you have in your IT department have in fact worked for the county in the past, know the people in our IT department. So that kind of cooperation is even easier to facilitate because of the fact that everybody knows each other. And hopefully with a structure in the county government that is more open to cooperating with the officer holders in the Sheriff's Department, that's going to be more the rule than the exception.
Absolutely.
In the past, it's always been something to the effect that the sheriff's office, it's a privilege to have IT services as opposed to a right. But then if you shut our privilege down, then we are non-operational, and I don't think that's fair to the citizens of Clay County. But we don't feel that now, so it's definitely a change.
Actually, I look at it as a necessity. This is not, this is vitally your core mission. But I'm sorry, I'm taking us off into a
That's
different.
okay.
Please continue.
That's okay. I can make this fairly quick. Actually, if we'd like, let's move on to page 24. We can just skip on down. This is the Community and Court Services Division. This comprises the court security, civil process, fugitive apprehension, sex offender registration, and the CCW is a separate account.
School
mistake.
resource deputies.
The school resource deputies are funded in a different account, but they fall under the operating budget of this account. Yes, so personnel is in a different account, but their needs day-to-day would be in this division. And so there's a lot of training in this division because the Community Court Services Division is approximately 42 people currently that are all, with the exception of one clerk, one full-time clerk, they're all commissioned. And they all have needs spread out outside the central location of the sheriff's office. So they are out all over the county, in adjacent counties. And we just need to make sure that this group that has a very diverse mission, a very diverse function, has the training that they need. For instance, we need specialized training for fugitive. Civil process is one of the county's greatest liabilities and forever has been ignored in training because there just isn't a lot of training available. But we have to be able to identify training and legal support for the civil process unit. All right, moving on and
I was
jump
just going
in.
to add to that, for the civil unit, if you've been watching TV there or paying attention to the court's decisions about having an eviction moratorium that was just extended, our deputies need to know exactly what that means. And the liability of not knowing case law, statutes, the orders that are coming out, it's crucial because, again, if you go back to Jackson County, and I don't want to pick on Jackson County, but they seem to be leading the way in things happening that we need to pay attention to. Civil papers were being served last week or maybe the week before, and there ended up being an officer-involved shooting because it was involving an eviction. And evictions right now are extremely sensitive issue or topic. And we just need to know, or our deputies need to know when to do what and under what circumstances. And that's why with all the sworn deputies in that division, that's why it's crucial, and that's why the majority of the training is from that division.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's something else that we, as a county, in fact, this week, we applied for an emergency rental program. That may well, it didn't occur to me until just now, but that's something that your folks may well need to be kept in the loop of.
Absolutely,
Once
that'd
that
be great.
program's, we've just made application, that application is in the hands now of the Treasury Department, but once, assuming we get funding from that, we need to make sure that your deputies who may be asked to serve certain papers are up to speed on that. So we need to probably increase the communication on that area. And quite honestly, that hadn't occurred to me until this moment.
Absolutely. That information is crucial because we get asked all the time, what are the rules? Where can I get assistance? And even though it's not a responsibility of the sheriff's office, but we still have a responsibility to the citizens and say, you know what? We know exactly where you can get that information. Let us help you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move fairly quickly through the rest of this and just identify some high points, some key things where there's a lot of cost. On page 30, you will see some commodities requests from the Community Court Services Division. These commodities requests are for ammunition, handguns, long guns, training ammunition, duty ammunition, and taser supplies for the entire sheriff's office. This is important because that division for all commodities requested $249,648. And it is proposed that they be given $22,145. That is 9% of what they requested. And I call your attention to page 30 because there's no way that $22,000 is going to fund those needed resources for the sheriff's office. All right, moving on to, let's move on to the next division. Oh, wait, no, I do want to say something about the capital requests from Community Court Services on page, beginning on page 33 at the bottom. What was the number I gave you? There were a lot of capital requests in this division. I would like to identify a few items that can be set aside for this year, because we recognize we're asking for a lot, and we need to prioritize, and we know that you guys need to prioritize as well. The metal detector, tinting for the courthouse, ballistic panels, those things are important. We would argue that those are facilities costs. On page 34, we do need taser supplies. We need additional taser CEU, we call them CEWs, controlled energy weapons. So the $32,500 for tasers, that's something we need. We were able to purchase the ballistic helmets and face shields out of last year's budget. That can be stricken, because at the time this budget was submitted, we had not yet been able to purchase those.
Are those, are these new, or are these things that you've already communicated to budget team?
This is new.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure I was clear.
We went
Okay.
through one last time to try to identify other items that we could move to a later date, a later
Yes,
budget
yes.
date. And so, you know, when I talked about, when Captain Agdarian talked about needs, wants, and what we would like to have, this is some of the items that we
Yes.
identified as, you know what, yeah, we want them, but right now I think we can do without, at least for this year.
So for this year, absolutely, the $423,000 for 9 vehicles out of this division's request, that can be set aside.
Steve Search for the budget team.
Please proceed.
If I just might interject here, a couple comments. I was looking at I was doing an analysis last night of your 2021 request versus what the previous administration had proposed for your budget. And I came up with some pretty significant differences. And your 553, your 554, 555, 556, and 557, I've identified about $1.4 million that is proposed less than what you requested. Does that sound about correct?
1.4?
Well, it looks like you were short $49,877 in 553's request, $263,000 in 554's, $563,000 in 555, $513,000 in 556, and about $54,000 in 557. That's just your contractual and commodities.
That does sound right, yes.
Okay. Well, I think what would be helpful for the commission and the budget team, if you guys could identify what additional funds you're requesting in each of those contractual and commodity line items, given the understanding that as it currently is proposed, each of those divisions has a, so to speak, silo of money for contractual and commodities. If you could identify for the commissions how much in additional funds that you think are needed for each of those categories, that would be helpful going forward.
Well, I can actually, okay, to speak to that, I can actually make this a one-sentence answer, I believe. If you look at the contractual and the commodities requests of all 5 divisions, 553 through 557, what we requested is what we need. I can break that. I mean, we could certainly break that down, but let me give you, for instance, when we talk about detention, we provided the contractual known contractual amount of food and medical costs. And once again, the previous administration proposed an amount that is less than, just for those two items, and that doesn't even include the other contractual obligations of detention. Previous administration once again recommended a budget that does not meet the food and medical costs of detention for the Clay County Sheriff's Office, which is a statutory obligation of the sheriff. So I mean, we know how that ended last year. I don't understand why they did that again this year, but I'm confident that it won't remain that way. So I guess to speak to Steve's, I know, you can read my mind, can't you?
Little pause.
To speak to Steve's statement, additional funds, we don't need additional funds in the contractual and the commodities. What we asked for is what we need.
But
Commodities is I'm sorry, capital is the area where there is room for discussion. Because, for instance, I said we didn't need the $423,000 request for vehicles in this division, because I know that we've requested $624,000 in the administration division, and that's where the cost of vehicles, for the entire sheriff's office resides. It's that kind of redundancy that we've gone through and identified as areas where, there can be change. But for contractual and commodities, if we asked for it, we need it.
Well, if I might just say, and I've said this until I'm blue in the face, when we started this budget process, we were $2.7 million overall in the county in the red. And so the budget team has been working for a couple of weeks to try to identify some cost savings and other places where we may get that to an even amount. But, I'm just trying to be realistic here. You're saying that you need another $1.4 million above and beyond what is proposed in contractual and commodities for those sheriff's office line items, and yet you're asking also for another potential $1.5 million for salaries, another $610,000 for new personnel. The rubber is going to meet the road there somewhere, and it's not going to be a pretty sight, because I don't think that all of that is going to be able to be accomplished this year. And I'm just being realistic with you.
Sure.
You're talking about 1.4 million and 1.5, that's about 3 million, and then another $600,000, that's $3.6 million, and I don't know where we're going to find that, folks.
Well, and that's why they hired you. You're the man for the job. But I do want to point out, for the last 5 years, the Clay County Sheriff's Office has been a punching bag. And we were hoping that this was going to be the year of reconciliation. And we could have very easily asked for $5 million, but what we're trying to do is identify areas where we can reduce the money that we're asking for and work with the commission and say, hey, look, we understand the situation, but because of the last 5 years, this is why we're asking for the money that we're asking for.
And I don't doubt for a minute what you're saying about being punching bag, because I was on the end of that
Right.
punch, so I know what you speak of. But somewhere between your want and your hard needs, we need to find some kind of a compromise. So that's just all I'm saying, that I don't think that we can come up with another $1.4 million with everything else that's being asked also. That's just the fact of it. But we'll do what we can do, but I also need to know from you all what you think are more critical, actual hard needs.
And that's why I said the critical hard needs are the contractual and commodities requests. Those are the critical hard needs. Commodities, if you look at 554, which is the community court services, there is over $820,000 worth of $820,000 versus worth of capital requests in that division alone. Well, we can save you $500,000 just there. We asked for $300,000 for a range. That's what we need out of capital requests for that division. So the remainder of the capital requests out of that division, we can set that aside. So there's $500,000. So if what we're looking for then is to come up with other savings to meet that 1.4 million that we're asking for, there's a third of it in our capital requests.
When I was referring to that 1.4 million to Captain Agdurian, that was just in contractual and commodities. That had no capital numbers in it at all. So.
And if I might on that, Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor, and Mr. Sirks is absolutely correct on the budget team and what we're working with. I would just add that we have explored the idea in Fund 300 for some potential, it's the use tax general capital fund for the county for the sheriff capital costs. So that's one area we can explore for capital as a way, and then we can work on the other areas. And back to just real quickly, the detention matter, I would just say the thought on that we brought up at the beginning of this meeting with 279-613, and this is something we bring up with council as well, if the commission wants to explore it, entertain it, it's when we look at the ballot language for the sales tax, initially the idea of a jail brought into all things law enforcement, we've just had, even an understanding from state audit questions of where the jail should be financed. However, that is certainly something we understand and appreciate, that sheriff doesn't have control of that, but then they have to basically finance it. One thing you could look at is if the general fund were to reduce its supplication to Fund 279 and then fund it themselves. Those are legal questions that are outside of my realm, so I'll leave that at that, my comments.
And I know we're kind of running out of time, but I would just say, I know what we're asking for, and I understand the situation that Clay County is in. We'll continue to work with the budget team, and because they have the overall eyesight on the entire budget, whereas we're just asking for a little slice of it. And I'm confident that we'll be able to come up with a way to make everything work in 2021, but there are just some things that we absolutely need as opposed to what we would like. Just want to point that out.
Yes.
Okay. You're right, we are kind of coming up, so I think if you'd like to go ahead and, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we
No,
open up for questions?
I think we can just leave it at that. I'd rather
Okay.
address any specific questions or concerns that any of you have.
Okay. I'm going to, I'm just going to make, one or two comments and just kind of open it up for the rest.
Okay.
And that is, while we find ourselves in a tough situation, the spirit of cooperation is night and day from what previous years have had. I also want to say that the budget team we've assembled this time, I think, is a much more, I think, functional to some degree budget team than we've had before. We're certainly lucky to have Steve Sirks heading up that team. I also really am enthused about the fact that we have elected officials, so we're expanding it beyond just the administration, but opening it up. So what that does is, I think, gives the budget team, a lot more on a broad look at what's going on in the county, not looking at just from the single administrative point of view. And so, like I say, they've got a tough job. They have a tough mission, but I'm confident, and we're all very confident in Steve Sirks and his ability to navigate these waters, because it's obviously he's sat on the other side of this table up until recent times, and I think it's very encouraging that he has a very good understanding of what you guys need. So there's a lot of efficiencies that can be brought into the discussion of it, given that. With that, Commissioner Carpenter, would you like to have any questions or comments?
Sure. No, just want to thank you all for being here, and absolutely agree with the overall concept that we need to get y'all more funding and correct what has been clearly a problem of the past. Not only because you mentioned we're a growing county and we haven't kept pace with that, with funding the sheriff's department. So for public safety purposes, and also just, it's pretty clear that a lot of the decision-making in the past, in recent years, has been politically motivated in order to settle scores and whatnot. And the era of doing that has come to an end, and I look forward to, every dollar that we can reasonably get y'all, I look forward to supporting. Hopefully we can move forward in a positive way, and genuinely look forward to working with you. Sheriff Aiken, I've had the chance to talk with you a decent bit, and look forward to keep continuing that. And anytime that we can talk and work together on things, I look forward to doing that as well. So thanks.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Commissioners. I I want to thank you guys for coming in. You know, where my heart has always been with the sheriff's department, and I stand with our sheriff's department, and I've been watching this for years. So by me not saying a lot says a lot. But my heart is to make sure that you guys are adequately funded. And if that means I need to go and have a bake sale out in the parking lot, I will do whatever I can. But we were left in a bad situation here in the county when our predecessors left. But we are going to do whatever we can to make sure that you guys can keep yourself safe and keep the community safe and operate on all your functions. So I want you guys to know that. And if you need anything else from us, let us know.
Thank you.
Are there any additional comments or questions from Budget Team?
No, I think the budget team looks forward to working with the sheriff's administration and going forward in a positive manner. And we'll be visiting over the next week or so about some things and see if we can get some things lined out. So I did look at, what Captain Agdarian had referenced, and, the fixed costs for contractual food and medical are about $1.7 million, and the detention division budget, just a little bit less than $1.4 million has been budgeted. So that's out of whack by itself, and those two line items for about $300,000. So we definitely need to fix those kind of things also. So that's what we'll be looking forward to discussing with them.
Thank you very much. And it continually strikes me is the contrast between this budget hearing, actually having a budget hearing, and past transactions when we've been constructing a budget. Those dark days when the sheriff's department had little choice but to file a lawsuit against the county is something that, those are days that I think we're going to leave very far behind us. But in the wake of those issues, we're left with a lot of problems to work through, and both sides working together, I think, is going to really, help to resolve the situation. The lack of funding to the sheriff's department did not occur overnight, and the solutions are not going to occur overnight. And I think I think where we start at is that both sides have a realistic idea, both the sheriff's department and the administration have a realistic idea of where we are. But if we look at this thing as a multi-year process to where we're going to repair this thing, and within, a timeline, a very hopefully short timeline, we'll be able to resolve these issues. I know I've talked to the sheriff, and he's talked in terms of phasing things in and how we get back to where we are. So just that recognition and the atmosphere, I think, make me extremely optimistic that we will be able to bring ourselves into a much better place, in a relatively short period of time. So thank you for being here, and thank you for cooperation. You've still got a few minutes. If you'd like to make any closing comments, please do so.
Steve, this is going to shock you. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. With this commission in place and the leadership that you're able to give the entire county, we're all in the same boat. We're all rowing in the same direction. There are things we need. There are things we have to have, and we appreciate and put trust in you that you will do everything that you can to make it right, and we understand it's a process. I have never been more proud to work for this county, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Sheriff?
I guess I'll finish it off with, in years past, there was a little bit of anxiety, to say the least, to walk into this room knowing what we were going to be confronted with. But when I walked into this room this morning and I saw everyone who is in place now, and knowing which direction that we're going to go with the new leadership, like Captain Agdarian, I couldn't feel more proud to be with Clay County government and the Clay County Sheriff's Office. So really look forward to where we're going to be able to take this. I know there's going to be a lot of hard decisions to make, but we're going to make them together, and we're going to keep pushing forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have about 5 minutes before our next presentation. Do we want to take a short break? We've been at it for a couple of hours, about an hour and a half now. Would we like to take maybe a 5 or a 10-minute break, stretch a little bit, and then come back? And we will be looking at planning and zoning, I believe, is next on our agenda. So we will stand at ease until, let's say, 5 minutes after the hour. everybody back in our seats? Okay, looks good. I'd like to bring us in from our moment of standing at ease. We will continue the budget hearings, and in this, we will go to planning and zoning. And I'll just, I think you were here, you heard my little orientation, so I don't need to go through that again for you. So, Mr. Jones, if you'd like to proceed, just go right ahead.
Yes, thank you. My name's Kip Jones. I'm the Planning and Zoning Manager. I've been with the county a little bit over 6 years. This is the first time I've been part of the budget process, so I appreciate the time that the commission is giving me. The Planning and Zoning total budget is $569,739. That is roughly 0.56 of the overall county budget. To fully know the Planning and Zoning budget, you need to know the personnel, because 78% of that budget is tied to the personnel that we have. We currently have 6 full-time employees, plus the planning and zoning attorney that handles all the planning and zoning issues. My department, and I should point out that I did provide you a summary that goes into a little more detail, and I'll just hit the highlights, so all the commissioners should have that. Our department includes the building, planning, and code enforcement divisions, and we have jurisdiction outside city limits or in unincorporated Clay County. The building department currently consists of 1 building inspector. I serve as the backup building inspector during our busy times, because that's how I started with the county as well. The building department is responsible for issuing all building permits, reviewing all building plans, and completing all the inspections for the unincorporated portion of Clay County for projects that are required to have permits. 99% of that is residential construction, whether it be new homes, pools, decks, things of those sort. The planning division consists of 1 planner, basically is responsible for all the land use for property outside city limits. Those cases can include rezonings, subdivisions of land, conditional use permits, and then I spend a good portion of my time working with the planning division on those cases as well. And then we also include the code enforcement division for all properties outside city limits. I have 1 code enforcement inspector who is responsible for the daily duties. Typical code enforcement cases for unincorporated Clay County include junk and debris, derelict vehicles, folks trying to live in RVs, dangerous buildings, things of those sort. We try to be proactive and also take citizen complaints, and that inspector investigates those complaints. Our department is also responsible for the floodplain management in unincorporated Clay County. My position serves as the land trustee. We also assign addresses for unincorporated Clay County. We are the contact for the census when it rolls around. The building division also has cooperative agreements that were approved by the county commission for the village of Glen Eyre, Claycomo, Prathersville, and the village of Oaks, where we provide inspection services for those smaller jurisdictions. And we also issue floodplain permits and land disturbance permits. So that's kind of a summary of what we do. As far as the specific budget, we're not requesting any additional funds. If I had one request, it would be that we would take money from line 294, roughly $3,140, and make my 300 line items match what we requested, the 301, 316, 332, and 370. And we want to be a good teammate as the county goes through this process. There are specific line items that have not been used in several years, or items that were added that most likely won't have to be used during the 2021 budget year, that I could go into detail that possibly, if it's the will of the commission, could be removed. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Steve Search for the budget team. Would you please restate what you were just saying about that specific line item, please? Moving that money.
So moving money out of 294, which is the County Green Build Rebate Program, $3,140 into 301 General Office Supply, 316 Wearing Apparel, 332 Motor Fuels, and 370 Education and Training Supply, to up those to match what we requested, basically.
So increase those amounts to your department request versus what was proposed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So that really has a net zero on your entire budget. You're just talking about moving within that budget, of course.
Yes, I'm not requesting any additional funds.
Good, okay.
Yes, Victor Hurlbert.
Please
Clay-
proceed.
Thank you. Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. Yes, Mr. Judge, so on your other comment, you mentioned something about any unused lines. Would you just have a recommendation for the budget team? Is there any one thing you're thinking of in particular?
Yes, so there are specific items that we need to be able to operate because we have state statutes that we have to follow, such as public noticing our cases. So I obviously wouldn't want money removed from those items. And our training is very important for my employees because we do specific jobs, so I would hate money to be taken from there. But in particular, under 202, a couple years ago, $15,000 was added into that account because the highway department did not have personnel to do the subdivision review inspections. So we requested money there so we could have an outside engineer do that. I don't expect that to be used in 2021 because we don't have any ongoing projects at this point. So that's one item. Also in 202, there's $14,000 for stormwater materials and $3,000 for a Missouri River cleanup. Due to the coronavirus last year, that $14,000 goes to a program that educates the local high schools about stormwater and testing water, and that did not occur. I don't know if that'll occur again in 2021. So that could be removed. The $3,000 for the Missouri River cleanup, kind of along those same lines. Planning and zoning had stormwater outreach because we used to have a national stormwater permit. We no longer have that. And then under 228, we pay the assessor's department $5,000 every year to be able to have access to their aerial image on our GIS system. I honestly don't know if that's in their budget as well or not. So that's another item that could possibly be looked at. And then item 293 has $10,000 for Mark Planning Sustainable Places. That's a grant. That money has not been used since 2013. It's basically if there's a project in Clay County that the county would want to match, help fund that project, then that's what that money is for. And then the line item I already discussed, 294, is the Clay County Green Build Rebate Program. That's basically a program that was approved by the county commission. If you're building a new home, if you build it to a certain standard, you get a portion of your building permit fee back. We generally get only 1 or 2 of those a year because it's a cumbersome process to be able to do that. Now that may require a resolution suspending that program if that, if you wanted that to go away, but that could be one to look at as well. I think those would be my recommendations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I think in those kinds of instances, it might be a good idea to come before the commission and make that proposal. In fact, I think at some point as we go forward, it wouldn't be the worst idea for us to just have maybe some time set aside when you can give us some of these overviews. I appreciate the idea that you've come up with some places here where the funding may not be necessary. As you're well aware, we are in a tight budget situation here, and as you pointed out, while your budget is not a very large part of our budget, certainly every place that we can economize is appreciated. Something that this really is a place where it impacts other budgets, and that is the other day we had highway in. and spoke a little bit with them about, and one of the things that I found particularly something that I really want to kind of look into a little bit more as we go along, and that is the development that the commission approved just north of Liberty. The concerns that I'd had at the time, I expressed, but one of the things that comes about is obviously it's another burden on the highway department to go in and to maintain when it comes to the county's part to maintain it, and also snow removal and that sort of thing. What is occurring to me is that we seem to be hitting a situation where we are doing more what appears to me to be suburban development. That's something I would like to look into as far as how we go forward on that, because it goes beyond, as I say, just the situation of the immediate development, but as we as a county have to maintain those roads and those other utilities, it becomes more and more problematic and expensive. The other thing that concerns me is that I think where we should be heading is to where those areas become annexed into municipalities, because a municipal government is much better equipped to service those citizens when they're in kind of a suburban setting than a county government is. So I'm really looking for how we address that. I realize that it was in fact a majority vote at the last commission, so I do certainly recognize that, but I would like to go forward looking at that with a bit more of a critical eye, and even to the point of possibly making some alterations in how we address those particular kinds of issues that would allow the Planning and Zoning Department a little bit more guidance in what we would like to see as a commission.
So if I may, so there's a lot that can go into that. We're working under a 2008 comprehensive plan that at some point probably needs to be updated, because development obviously is going to be a big issue as we move forward. It's kind of that transition from the city to the county is a gray area, in my opinion, in some of the comprehensive plan. Now, there are specific rezoning criteria. You know, I gave each of the commissioners the land development code today. It will talk about being able to supply enough service to new residential neighborhoods. The highway department is a part of every single case that we have. So if they have those concerns, they need to make those concerns known so we can put those in the reports, because my recollection of the subdivision you're talking about, the highway department did not make those concerns known. Obviously, that would weigh very heavily with the Planning and Zoning Commission and the County Commission if the highway department would say that they can't maintain that amount of road. But there's a bunch of different things that I think we could do, and I'd be happy to visit with the commissioners, citizens. One thing I do want to point out is all of our records are public records. And our door is open every day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So if the commissioners have specific questions, or if citizens have questions, we're always happy to answer those.
Well, and this is one of those areas, and this is not to assign blame, because I think we've had a situation up until recently where there might have been some reluctance for different departments to talk with one another. And I guess the two things that I would like to come out of this particular part of our discussion is that, number one, that and obviously the other commissioners can weigh in and give their opinion, but I think we're looking in the same general direction, and that is that departments have the ability to communicate with each other more readily and more openly than perhaps has been true in the past. And the second thing is, I realize that there's been an atmosphere where it has been more challenging than it should be for people to express what they see as potential problems if someone in the quite honestly, if someone in the former commission had wanted something to happen, it's difficult sometimes to raise concerns about that. And I think we wanted to generate an atmosphere where we can hear those genuine concerns. I don't think any of us here are looking for rubber stamps within government. We need to know, and we need to depend upon the experience of our staff and I think we want to make sure that we are not inhibiting their ability to communicate their legitimate concerns and views to us. So I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that.
And I would welcome that communication.
Very good. Commissioner Carpenter.
Thanks for being here, and you mentioned this is the first time in a while or ever that
Ever.
Okay, so I'm really glad that we're doing this process. You know, I think it's gone really well, and I'm glad to be doing it. And I want to thank you specifically for the document presentation. I told our new clerk yesterday. She did a similar thing, and you know, as we go forward into future years and do the budget each year, I think some combination of these things can really be a model for what we sort of ask of departments and office holders in terms of just talking, presenting both what their office does and then, justification for expenses and things like that. So thank you for doing it. One of the things I've been asking folks, we've had a trouble in this county with some overspending issues in recent years, and it's part of the reason we're in sort of a tough spot right now in terms of not having enough money to pay for everything. And so one of the things I've noticed just in looking at some of these budget numbers are pretty dramatic increases in budgets of different departments. And I've just basically been comparing the 2019 numbers to where we're at here in 2021, which is obviously just a couple of years. It's not a lot of time. And with y'all's budget, the 2019 number was at 436 is what I have, and then we're talking 570 now, which is about a 30% increase over 2 years. It looks like a good chunk of that was our loggers' expenses that are probably outside of your control. But obviously, and at 30%, amazingly, that's not. A number of other departments are actually even quite a bit higher than that. But it's just not sustainable for our county to be having 30, 40, 50, 60% increases in, over 2-year periods in departments. So other than the logger stuff, what accounts for the rest of the increase from that 436 up to the 570?
So the three biggest increases were the $15,000 for the inspections that the highway department no longer does. The planning and zoning attorney, which was roughly $53,000, was moved into my personnel budget 2 years ago. So that was a big portion of it. And then we were allowed to hire a code enforcement inspector. So it's all in the personnel of the attorney and the code enforcement inspector.
Okay. And when the $53,000 was moved into your budget, it was moved from somewhere else, so that wasn't an additional expense?
Yes, I have no idea where it was paid before that, but it was moved into my account at that point.
Got it. Okay. All right, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson.
I just want to say thank you for coming in, and I really don't have any questions. We've worked together for years and in various signing of things, but I want to thank you for bringing everything into us and taking the time today.
All right, thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the budget team?
Steve Sirks, budget team. I just want to get some clarification. You were kind of going through those things in 202 pretty quickly. Could you recap what you said regarding some of those budgeted expenses in 202, just to make sure I have those that you indicated that possibly are not needed for 2021?
Yes, sir. So there's $14,000, which was for the stormwater outreach for the local high schools. There's $3,000 for a Missouri River cleanup in Clay County. And there is $15,000, which is the third-party inspections that was added due to highway not being able to do those any longer. I would also throw out, since I act as the backup building inspector, we typically, if we had to get rid of it, we could probably survive the $2,000 for relief building inspectors. That's set aside if I would lose my building inspector. That allows us to hire a third-party inspector to cover those inspections. I mean, I would really not want to lose that, but that could be looked at as well. Those are the items in 202 that I would see.
Thank you for that, and I'd like to commend you because I think you're the only person possibly that has come in here and offered to make some reductions in their budget. So we appreciate your forthrightness and honesty and ability to cooperate with the budget and the commission.
And I should add that, I appreciate that, and I should add that some of our budget responsibilities are contingent upon what kind of projects we get as well. So there may be a chance where I come back next year or the year after and say, hey, I need that $15,000 back because the county commission approved some projects that we need to do those inspections. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciate that, and I think it's very wise of you to say that, you know, it may well be that need may resurface. Certainly, you've got a history on this particular budget, at least that there is a willingness to look at reductions. So if you come back to us with requests for increases, certainly that gives a different tenor to the conversations, which we obviously appreciate very much. Any other questions or comments? Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make?
No, sir, just if commissioners have questions or general public, just reach out to us because we want to be as open and transparent as possible.
And I appreciate that. And like I say, I think we're entering a time when it is, our silos are less rigid and we can feel free to talk to you. You can express things to us and we don't end up, we don't end up getting at loggerheads, but we actually end up cooperating more. And as I say, hopefully the increased cooperation between your department and other related departments is going to make us a more efficient and a, quite honestly, leaner budget kind of machine here. So thank you again for coming in. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Steve Sirks, if I might also make an additional comment not related to this, but
Please go ahead.
due to time constraints and budgeting and of the time and time allotments available, we were not able to get the airport manager in on these schedules. So late this afternoon, the budget team will be meeting separately with Mr. Smith from the airport manager, to discuss his budget, and we'll get back to you about any results of that.
That's great, and there may well be some other things that come up along those lines, and clearly we may well have some of the folks who have come before us in the last 3 days may well submit additional materials. So I'm every confidence that you'll be able to incorporate those into your findings and be able to communicate that to us. So thank you.
And it's my hope that we're able to take everything that we've gained from these meetings this week and any subsequent conversations that we may have and incorporate those in some issues for the commission to address next Wednesday, January 20th.
Well, and we seem to be coming, as you say, at least to the end of the scheduled public hearings on budget. We'll be moving into a new phase, as you point out, a week from yesterday, next Wednesday. And I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you to the budget team for doing the work that you've done. I realize we are far from the end of the process. I also want to thank the new commissioners. This is not an easy thing to come up to speed with what's going on, and I think the questions asked by the new commissioners have been very good questions, very informative and very to the point. So certainly, I think if any concerns that anyone might have of the new commission coming up to speed, I think that those can be laid to rest. I think the new commissioners are doing a great job in stepping up to the challenge, which quite honestly is more of a challenge than past incoming commissioners have faced. So I certainly appreciate their hard work and diligence in the research that they've done and the hard work that they've done that they bring to this effort. I'll go ahead and just go another comment round, and then we will go on to the next area. We did have originally scheduled for the 11:30 time slot outside agencies, Clay County EDC, Economic Development Council, due to a death in the family. The person who was to present was not able to make it today. So we have, in fact, completed what we have on our budget schedule. I think there were some others who might have been coming before us, but I believe that they will be able to to communicate with budget team, and so we can go forward and stay on schedule. As we all know, budget is due, I think January 29 is our date, so we are headed towards getting that done a few days in advance of that statutory deadline. With that, Commissioner Thompson, did you have anything you wanted to add before we move on?
No, I'd just like to thank the budget team and all their hard work, and I think we're going to get this done, one way or another. We're going to have a budget, so,
A balanced budget,
yes.
absolutely. Commissioner Carpenter.
I will just second the remarks of Commissioner Thompson. Look forward to continuing the process, and thank everybody who's working on it, and we'll look forward to next Wednesday as well.
Very well. That completes under discussion items. That moves us on to comments on non-agenda items. We are open, of course, to the public, and there's the opportunity right now for the public to comment through at any time on the live streaming and, of course, on the YouTube where this will be posted. I see nobody here that is prepared to make any comments from the public on non-agenda items. Do the commissioners have any comments on non-agenda items? Commissioner Carpenter?
I do not.
Very well. Commissioner Thompson? I don't, thank you. Had a little blank spot there. Very well. Are there any office holder comments on non-agenda items? Seeing none, are there any agencies here that would like to comment on any non-agenda items? Once again, seeing none. That completes the comments on non-agenda items. That brings us to recess, adjournment. I think it's time for us to quit if my words keep coming this way. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.